Welcome to the SBR Ice Guys show. I am Dana Lane. We have a little bit of a lineup change today. Ian Cameron has a previous appointment, so I'll be hosting the show today. And as always, with me is Alex B. Smith and Andrew McGinnis. And guys, we only have two games to go over today, so we could fill an hour up with chatting about things. But I appreciate you, as always, joining the show. And guys, I mean, yesterday we saw two games. I mean, in one of the games, I think that we've talked about this before about, I mean, I thought we were all pretty high on the Boston Bruins, if I'm not wrong. I certainly was, and I was very surprised about the effort. And before we get into today's games, let's go ahead and kind of recap what we saw yesterday. But the Bruins getting knocked out in 5 games, to me, was a huge surprise, and I really just didn't think that they raised their level at any point. And I'll talk about it after you guys, but to me, when you go from the regular season to the postseason, I want to see an elevation of your play. And I just didn't see that out of the Boston Bruins. And Alex, I'll start with you. What was your feelings about the overall feelings about the Bruins Lightning series?
Well, yeah, I was completely stunned that it only went 5 games. This was something that I had circled. I thought for sure to be a compelling set of 6 or 7 games in this series because we've seen both of these teams play wonderful hockey throughout the year. But the one caveat we had with Boston, at least during the regular season, is what pretty much got them knocked out of this round was that they only had one line produced. We talked about Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak. They were exceptional in the Toronto series. They had some great bursts at times of scoring during the regular season, but when those guys went cold, I mean, none of them had any points whatsoever. I think there was 3 combined shots on goal between the three of them in game yesterday. So the secondary guys weren't stepping up at all, and your top guys aren't stepping up. There's only so much that Tuukka Rask as a goaltender can do, a veteran guy who's seen a ton of shots, and Tampa Bay took full advantage of it, like I kinda expected yesterday. I was on them in regulation. This Lightning team's finally, they woke up from the kind of slumber that they had at the end of the year, and even kind of, looked a little rusty at times against New Jersey, but now they seem to be fully on track and they seem ready to, not only just make it obviously now in the Eastern Conference Final, but they could make a deep run and possibly win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and Andrew, I mean, and that's a good point, Alex, because you know they did become a one-line team, and I thought there was when you're talking about Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak. I mean, if they're not performing, and I don't know how you feel about this, Andrew, but to me, I don't need Pasternak and Marchand getting a ton of assists. I need to see them producing goal wise, and that's just something that we didn't see against Tampa. And then, of course, when you don't have any secondary scoring, I mean, guys like Jake DeBrusk, I think, had a fantastic year, and I think he can look back on it and be happy with what the groundwork that he's laid for his career. But I thought Jake, of course, he had some injuries, but I thought that Jake didn't have a great postseason, especially against Tampa. We talked about David Krejci a bunch of times. Uh, Strangely enough, the one who played pretty well yesterday, beat Vasilevsky from the left circle on a 5-on-3, no less. But for him, that was good to get off the schneid. I mean, the guy has only had 17 goals during the regular season. I think going into next year, I maybe need some more production from my second line center. But Rick Nash, a pickup there at the end of the season, was very Rick Nash's. I mean, he's had, and Andrew, I don't know how you're feeling about this, but I mean, Rick has been really good at times and really bad at times. And there's really no in between, and he mix in some injuries, and I still kind of throw around in my head whether or not this guy is even in the discussion to be a Hall of Famer, but maybe he is. I just think there's just so much inconsistency, and yeah, he's a 21 goal scorer this season, but like Thomas Tatar for the Vegas Golden Knights, I mean, he too was a 20 goal scorer, but uh, just not a guy that I don't think Gerard Gallant had a lot of confidence in during the stretch. I mean, were you surprised that Boston turned into a one line team as the postseason went on? Andrew?
Well, Dana, once again, good afternoon, guys. And one thing I wasn't surprised about, Dana, was that they're such a mental team, and if it would have been the other way around, if Boston would have kind of got ahead, I think it could have been a completely different story. But Boston is either very high on themselves, or if they get down in the dumps, they really do stay there. And I think that's one of the perfect examples of why this series did not work out well in Boston's favor. And if you watch that game yesterday, guys, in my opinion, I still think, and I said it yesterday on our show, I think that Boston just tried to do too much. I mean, one play that really stands out, guys, was when Marchand coming in on the right wing and has a clear opportunity for a shot, or at least can put it on net for a rebound or something, and decides to put it between his legs and try and go for a fancy move, ends up getting just completely beasted into the boards. And when you work so hard in the offensive zone, you don't end up getting a shot off. It's hard to really watch. I mean, I can think of numerous plays yesterday where the Boston Bruins controlled possession inside the Tampa Bay zone for maybe 30, 45 seconds to a minute. And after all that stuff, they still get maybe one, if two, dangerous scoring opportunities out of it. I mean, I think when it comes down to it, guys, when you have skill on the team, but ultimately you have to kind of dumb down your game a little bit. And I'm not saying that they tried to do too much, and that was that's not an excuse why the Lightning were so successful. But for sure, guys like David Krejci and Rick Nash, like you said, Danny, even guys like Backus, those guys have to be there all playoffs. They can't be just there for every game or two. We can't rely on Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasternak to carry this team because as much as they really do for this team, it definitely has to be a complete effort. As far as the goaltending goes, we definitely do have to give a lot of praise to Andrei Vasilevsky. I think that he will be the backbone of this Tampa Bay team because I will continue to say it about this Tampa Bay team, even though they did take out the Bruins in five. Uh, this team is not scared of just going on the rush. I mean, they love a fast paced game, and when that ends up happening, a lot of times it does go the other way against you as well, and does result in odd man rushes against your goaltender as well. So Vasilevsky played really well in those type of scenarios and was a brick wall back there for his team, giving them lots of confidence. So. One thing about this Bruins team, I'll continue to say it makes me sick to my stomach to see the greatness that they showed against this Toronto Maple Leafs team and then they come up and the effort that they give is just very poor against this Tampa Bay Lightning team. And so I'm looking forward to see how Tampa Bay moves on. But ultimately, some of the guys that they picked up, Dane, and some of the guys they could be relying on, even like a guy like Tuukka Rask, just didn't show up, and Tampa Bay did.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, Andrew, I kind of felt like the Bruins overachieved this year. I mean, I looked at their roster, and certainly the core players, in addition to Pasternak, that is seemingly has been there forever. Kind of pushed this team into a spot that I didn't think that they were. I really thought going into this season we were looking at a team that was going to be in the seventh spot, or six, seven spot, something like that, maybe eighth, but definitely around the six, seven. So what they did certainly surprised me, but I think at the end, the old Boston Bruins that we saw last season, where Tuukka Rask was completely inconsistent, I think that kind of shone through at the end. And looking into the future for them, they do have some salary constraints, and they have some issues because they don't have a 2018 first round draft pick. They have very little free. I mean, Rick Nash's contract's going to come off the book, so that's 3.9 million. That's coming off. But other than that, I mean, unless they make some moves, they really only have they're probably are going to be around that 4 or 5 million range underneath the cap. And I realize that the cap will go up some, but not a lot for them to make any moves. I mean, they're kind of like the Chicago Blackhawks, and Alex, you know what this is like. I mean, they're playing. My thing is, you're paying David Krejci $7.3 million. You better produce a little bit more than what he's been doing now. Now we might find out, and this happens all the time in the postseason or after the postseason. We might find out that these guys have injuries they're playing with. I mean, a couple of years ago, we heard that Bergeron had a collapsed lung or something similar to that, but it's something just ridiculous that didn't come out, that the NHL likes to tell you is an upper body injury. But really, they're top heavy with their salary. David Krejci 7.3, Bergeron 6'9, Pasternak 6'6, 6'7, Marchand 6'1, and Backus 6 million. I mean, guys, the getting strapped with a David Backus contract is I mean, for Sweeney to think Yeah, we're going to give a 34-year-old hockey player $6 million a year, and yeah, we're going to pay him through the 2021 season. I think that's going to come back to bite them. I think they're going to wish that they didn't pay back as what they are, because certainly he's not producing in the way that a $6 million would player would play. Plus, on top of that, he has a no movement clause in his contract, so he's not exactly the easiest player to move. He's 34 years old, and I think they're going to end up eating that salary at some point. But for Boston moving forward, good season, overachieving season for sure. But I think it's a disappointment, and not for Alex because he thought that Tampa was the better of the two. But disappointing for me because I just that secondary scoring completely disappeared, and the guys that you thought would chip in, it's kind of, we'll talk about Pittsburgh, Washington a little bit later, but the guys that you thought would chip in, for me, just were not there. I mean, the Danton Heinens of the world were nowhere to be found, and you can't have Marchand and Pasternak having one goal, even though that they have 13 assists. I don't need those guys to be playmakers. I need those guys to be goal scorers. And I didn't think. And Alex, I mean, tell me what you thought. The Bruins, and again, it's crazy the parallels that you can make between the Bruins and the Penguins at this point, because I think both of those teams, and the Penguins are still in it just due to sheer talent, but I think both of those teams are kind of on the same path. Where did you think the Bruins up their intensity level at all? I mean, the most intense thing that we got from the Bruins was Marchand licking people. And please, can you explain to me, if you know this guy is a licker, why do you get that close? I mean, if I'm next to Marchand, I'm skating away as quickly as possible, and it was almost like they leaned in. I said this yesterday on a tweet that I sent out. I would love to see Marchand and Patrick Kane in that smooth commercial for Gatorade, and I would love for just Pasternak to. It should be like for a razor blade or something, and Pasternak or a bird or Marchand gives him a lick and just says smooth, and then it's like a Gillette commercial or something. It's funny in my mind. It's probably not funny now, but did you think that? Did you think that the Bruins upped their intensity level like you expected, Alex?
No, they had some flashes of brilliance at times in this series, and even in the Toronto series, there were times where I remember somebody mentioned on Twitter saying that, "Oh, this Boston team could easily beat Pittsburgh if they meet in the conference final." And there were times where, yeah, they did look somewhat similar. They don't have, obviously, the talent edge is greatly in the favor of Pittsburgh, but there were times that where when all four, at least three of the top four lines and the goaltending was on point, Boston looked like they could beat anybody. But like I said, we didn't see that intensity stick around long enough or consistently enough to where they could make that move and be that prolific of a team. So no, it wasn't the case. And the issue with Marchand, and I said this on Twitter before, if this was the NHL that we knew of 10 or 20 or longer ago, Marchand would have been eating his lunch and dinner through a straw because somebody would have broken his jaw for trying to lick someone. It was absolutely ridiculous that obviously he was trying to bait the players into punching them in the face and drawing a major penalty or something. I get what he was trying to do, but like I said, the fact that Tampa Bay still kept getting close to him, and I guess they figured maybe, oh, if it happens to me again, then maybe the refs will call it a penalty. Well, no, they didn't the first time. They're not going to do it the second time. They're letting the league handle it. That's the problem. They let the league. You got Tom Wilson taking people's heads off and laughing about it. They're letting the league deal with it. The players need to deal with it, hold themselves accountable. Tom Wilson got his ass beat after that. We wouldn't have to worry about him ever taking any more cheap shots. Wouldn't be worried about Brad Marchand licking people. Like I said, it would be funny if he got some kind of a commercial deal out of it, maybe Tootsie Roll Pops or something. I saw some funny
Tootsie
tweets
Roll.
about that. Yeah,
How many licks
that
does
would
it
be. I
take
think
to
that would be
get the
great.
nipple of a lightning?
Oh yeah, that'd be perfect. That'd be season starts in October. It'd be great to have those running for Halloween maybe. But other than that, it's just ridiculous that this is the league that we have to deal with now until further notice. But yeah, Boston, like I said, overachieving season, had some great. They got great talent moving forward. The cap's going to be an issue. I think they develop players well enough to where the cap won't bite them in the ass like it has for the Hawks. Providence has always done a pretty good job of developing talent, but they're going to have to move some pieces around because, like I said, these older guys, Backus and Char and stuff. Well, those guys are going to be gone, and you moving that money out, and they got to find some ways to plug in some quality, decent quality or better quality players. So that might be an issue moving forward.
All right, we'll move ahead to the Vegas Golden Knights, San Jose Sharks, Game 6 from the SAP Center last night. And just one last thing about the Bruins. I mean, that penalty kill was absolutely atrocious. You can't be one of the top penalty killing teams in the league during the regular season, and then when the postseason happens, you end up killing 73.5% of your chances. I mean, that's just going to kill you if you're a top heavy team. So with Vegas and San Jose last night, guys, it is. I mean, I went on record. I mean, obviously, I was high on San Jose. I still like my reasoning, but there's an intangible with this Vegas Golden Knights team that you really can't put your finger on. And just when you say, well, you can look to that fourth line, and the San Jose fourth line is legitimate offensive threats, which they certainly are. Still offensively, there really is no comparison. But I think what happens is that draw a line. Sometimes there's this um, I don't know, togetherness, if you will, or just there's camaraderie or chemistry is probably the best word that you can't measure with analytics. You can't put a number on it, and it seems like when this team is against the wall. That they come out firing the next game to prove the doubters wrong, and they certainly proved me wrong as well. And honestly, Andrew, I mean, I'm to the point where if Pittsburgh gets knocked out, which I think I've been very high on the Penguins. Um, I think the Golden Knights are the team that's going to win the Stanley Cup from this point. I mean, I thought from the Western Conference point of view, they were the team the San Jose Sharks were the team that I feared the most because of their depth and because of their experience. And I thought Martin Jones was going to play much better in the postseason, which he did. But when you talk about Nashville or Winnipeg, they've taken 2 out of 3 from both of those teams this season, and if they could have found a way to score a goal against Nashville, perhaps that could have been 3 out of 3 in their 1-0 loss. But honestly, if I'm Vegas, the mentality is right now, I've gone to MTS Center and won. I've gone to Bridgestone Arena and won. They have never come to T-Mobile Arena and beat us in our place. So I have to think, no matter who they play in the next round, the mentality would have to be that they feel very good about their chances. And honestly, I think that they're better than both of those teams. And I think, if they face Pittsburgh in the end, I mean, I think again it's going to be the Penguins that we're used to seeing, and we'll talk about this later. I think they would have problems with the depth that I thought that they had. We'll see what happens if they get to that point. But Andrew, what was your overall thoughts about the Vegas Golden Knights closing out the San Jose Sharks last night at the SAP Center?
Yeah, Dana, I really just don't think that there should have been any reason for the Vegas Golden Knights to be paying plus 195 to win in regulation yesterday. I mean, I understand what this San Jose Sharks team has to offer, and we figured that they would have some type of bounce back, and everyone, figured this game was going to go to 7. But I just have to wonder the price that we got on that, the ability that the Las Vegas Golden Knights team has to adapt their play style, Dana, and I will admit that they're not a team that throughout the entire season I've followed as closely, definitely, especially as much as you. But from what I've learned about them, Dana, and let me know if I'm incorrect about this, but it really does seem to me that they can play any style. And that's why I do have to agree with you that heading in after this series with the Sharks, the way that they came in and saw, I'm more impressed that they handled that game the way that they did, Dana, more so if they would have won, let's say, a 5-4 game, a 5-3 game. If they would have won a 5-3 style game or a 4-3 game, I would have been a little less impressed than I am now. But the way that they shut down that San Jose Sharks team was very impressive to me. They showed they can buckle down defensively. They showed they can play that bump and grind game if they want to, and they can keep the Sharks out of the offensive zone. I mean, they didn't give them a lot of opportunity. And let's go back to the goaltender. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury, we can't say it enough. It's not just the fact that he makes those key saves. It's the fact that he's really, really worked on his rebound control. He communicates well with his defenders, but more so, they feel comfortable back there, Dana and Alex. I really do think that when you have a goaltender back there in the playoffs that you feel comfortable around, I do think that's one of the biggest mental things as far as NHL playoffs go is when you're a defender and you go back there, you make that play you're comfortable making. You're not worried about your goaltender. And I agree. I mean, this Winnipeg and Nashville, they're both going through hell and back against this in this series. I mean, this has by far been the toughest series of the playoffs. I mean, everyone's been calling this the Stanley Cup Finals coming a couple rounds too early. And I think that coming out of this series, they're going to be tired, whichever team it is. I think it will be Winnipeg, but whichever team it is, they're going to come out tired and they're going to come out trying to play like a style that they're not. And this Vegas team can match up anybody. They can match up that rough, aggressive style, and they can beat you in a 1-0 game if they have to. They proved that against LA, and they show us what they can do now. So against the Sharks. So I'm looking forward to seeing the Vegas Golden Knights move forward. And I think they are a front runner after this series win.
Well, you have to hope that Nashville and Winnipeg find a way to 7 games if you're the Vegas Golden Knights. If they could beat each other up for a couple more games, I'm sure that wouldn't hurt
Right.
Vegas, who, again, will have some time in between series to get healthy and prepare. And Alex, I mean, look, one of the key points that I made last night on another show was, Gerard Gallant has had the luxury of a team that has played with a chip on their shoulder. Ryan Reeves came out and said, nobody wanted any of us. And that's such a big, and I know that's kind of a, we've talked about this a million times, but I think it even goes deeper than that. I think, you take Reeves off the bench and you take Perron and you move him from the third line on the right side to the second line on the left side. You bring in a Ryan Carpenter. I mean, you making all these changes in Game 5, and really it was, to me, that was a turning point in the series, because if those moves don't work against San Jose, and you knew in Game 4 they needed a shot in the arm. I made some comments in a column here in the Las Vegas Review Journal about how I just thought that there were some guys that took some shifts off, and we saw, Thomas Tatar was asked to sit down for the remainder of the series. I mean, there was guys that I think that Gerard Gallant just said, "Hey, look, you're not playing Golden Knights hockey," and Tatar's he's been a tough fit. For most of the year since he's got to Vegas, and they certainly gave up a lot for him. And one of the few moves that you kind of scratch your head about, but hindsight's obviously 2020. But the fact of the matter is, Alex, I mean, the moves that Gerard Gallant has made to counter San Jose's ability in Game 4 to neutralize the Vegas speed. I thought were brilliant, and we were saying after Game 4 that we thought, or I was saying, I thought Pete DeBoer was getting the better of the coaching decisions, but certainly in Game 5 and Game 6, Gerard Gallant put his foot down and hammered the coaching battle, and ultimately he certainly won that. I was curious what your feelings were about the moves, and hey, Alex, I mean, Ryan Reeves came in, and one of the things I said was, "Hey, man, this might be a guy that's might be a little too jacked," but I mean, as he was, for his first game or maybe second game with the Knights, but boy, he played solid, and he's a good hockey player. I really love that pickup from day one, and certainly that was the right button to press last night.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing with Vegas throughout the entire year, even going back to how they built this team with the expansion draft, they put together. They fit all the pieces together. A lot of teams can't do that. They're teams that they could have all the money in the world and pick and choose players they want in free agency, but they still don't find ways to piece together a lineup and an identity that works. And I think that was the difference between Vegas and San Jose. San Jose, the team that they for me really never had an identity. They have some key superstar players over the years. We've seen Patrick Marleau and Joe Thornton. We've seen the younger guys, Joe Pavelski, the younger guys come up, Thomas Hurdle and so forth. They've gone through their fair share of goalies. They've never really had an identity of being either a complete shutdown defensive unit or a super fast offensive skilled unit, or a team that does magic at times with special teams. Where this Vegas team pieced everything together. They said guys who not so much that they were unwanted, but they just a lot of them just couldn't fit in with certain places for salary cap reasons, depth reasons, and they but Gallant has done a masterful job of piecing guys together, like I said. And when guys aren't pulling their weight, can sit them down, scratch them, and then bring in somebody who can, like I said, or bring in some energy guys like a Ryan Reeves. Move guys who do have offensive talent up, like Perron from the third line, the second line, but also they can go back down and play in whatever role they're called upon. And that's a testament not only to the talent of the team but to their coaching. So yeah, kudos to Gallant for being able to do that. And Pete DeBoer, he's a guy who I think doesn't get enough credit coaching wise. And like I said, the Sharks not making any more runs to the cup or possibly being a team, once these older guys go out of the wayside, we might see them make a huge decline. It won't be on Pete DeBoer. Pete DeBoer is a solid coach, but I don't think he has that front office for that matter of San Jose have really the blueprint to put together a team and an identity that works.
Yeah, and the one thing about and it's not necessarily the teams didn't want these guys. I think they know in the back of their mind that it was basically a game of musical chairs at some points. I mean, um, Florida certainly wouldn't want to give up, Riley and Marchessault. I mean, but they made a deal to make sure that, or Vegas made a deal to make sure that happened. So they had to make a deal to make that combo work. But looking into next year for
I think.
Vegas,
Think we're losing them there, Alex.
Yeah, Dana's freezing out a little bit. The the desert internet has struck once again, but I guess we can go on. Well, we'll get him back.
you know.
Yeah.
Now I see him talking, but he's not
All right,
speaking.
now we hear you.
You're
Yeah.
going off right now,
We-
Dana. Let's hear what you have to say.
Well, it's so much better when you can't. I sound so much smarter when you can't hear me. No, I was just saying, next year James Neal's making $5 million right now. He's a UFA. Of course, the Grabowski contract is coming off. David Perron at $3.8 million as a UFA, but he's 29 years old, so it really depends on what he's going to be seeking at the end of the series. At the end of the season, Ryan Reeves is, of course, also a UFA. So Spiza on defense, Clayton Stoner, he is going to be gone. Of course, they're going to have a lot of cap space, and they basically can do anything that they want. I mean, they can keep this team together if they choose. But there is there's a reasonable a doubt there that this team will look next year the way it looks this year, and they don't have a first or a third rounder this year in the draft, so there's going to be a lot of turnovers. And a point to all that is, I think this is uh, if I'm a Vegas fan, I have to sit back and I have to enjoy this right now, because there's no guarantees next year. And even, you can ask Todd McClellan in Edmonton about what is guaranteed and what isn't. You can ask Mike Babcock, because after they were dismissed last season, he basically got on his presser and was talking about next season and how exciting it was going to be. Well, I hope the first round exit once again was very exciting for you, Mike, because that's what you were handed. So there was no guarantees with this, and for Vegas, pushing all the right buttons with a bunch of guys that have a lot to prove, and especially for Neil and Perron, it could either get long-term deals or big dollar deals. I think it's going to be one or the other for both of those guys, because I don't think at 30 years old anybody's going to be signing James Neal to a 7-year deal, and certainly the same. Maybe David Perron's going to get a longer deal just because he's 29. But the future certainly it could be bright for this team, but it's a here and now thing for Vegas, and moving forward, I think they got a great chance to hoist the Stanley Cup. And strangely enough, there's some guys walking around town here with 300 to 1 or 400 to 1 Stanley Cup final tickets, and I think that they're probably sweating right now and hoping that comes true. But anyway, okay, so that was last night's game. Let's move to tonight's games. We have two on deck, obviously. Game 6 between the Washington Capitals and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Tonight, the Washington Capitals lead the series 3-2. Puck drop 7 o'clock Eastern time, 4 Pacific, and it looks like right now the Penguins are about -$2. That is a huge favorite that I'm sure none of us want to be involved in. The total is 6. The Penguins are minus $1.20 in regulation, which to me looks something that's a little bit more attractive, obviously, than laying $2. But it looks like 50 from I'm looking at ticket count right now. Looks like the general public is on Pittsburgh. About 53% of the total tickets is on the Pens. 68% is on the over, but there's not a lot of movement as far as the numbers is concerned. So, guys, I'll throw it to you. I mean, my thought on this, and I'll give it at the end, but Alex, I mean, to me, the secondary scoring for the Penguins has completely dried up. Guys that you would think would at least chip in a little bit have been non-existent, and here we are with a Penguins team that really is a one-line team. When you have guys like Kessel and Malkin, and I realize there was an injury to Malkin, but even Rust and guys that you would really depend on to give you some secondary scoring just have not been there. Do we see the Penguins win this game tonight and force a game 7, or do the Capitals finally get the monkey off their back and move on to the Eastern Conference Final?
I think we do see a game 7 here, and here's the difference between Pittsburgh and Boston. Like I said, Boston was a one-line team, and everything just kind of fell apart uh, with them. When Pittsburgh's a one-line team, you look at how good of a first line they have. They have 3 guys on their first line that can steal a game all on their own, and that's what they've been doing. And the goaltending, in my opinion, has been a hair bit sharper in comparison from Boston to. I would trust Tuukka Rask over Matt Murray if I had to choose, but in what we're seeing now, Matt Murray has come up with some really, really big saves, and the fact that the pressure, I lost count of how many times I've said this about the pressure that is on the shoulders of Ovechkin and Trotz and everybody in this Washington Capital organization of trying to close out a playoff series and get to a conference final. You know, until we see it happen, I got to prove that it's not going to happen. I feel that it's not going to happen. So I'm looking at Pittsburgh here. And the key thing with this is shopping around because you look at the lines, using SBRodds.com. He said minus $1.90 at one shop. I'm seeing for Pittsburgh, just overall on the money line, but I'm seeing a minus $1.05 in regulation. That is an incredible shift. So you really have to shop around. This is the perfect time of year. Like I said, if you don't feel like a game's going to go in overtime, which we haven't seen that many OTs like we have in previous postseasons, so the regulation line is something that people definitely want to be looking at, and that's what the way I'm going to be looking at here. I'm going to be playing Pittsburgh in regulation. And Dana, I have one question I wanted to ask you because I did notice this during the Vegas
Oh,
series.
don't ask me any questions, Alex. I'm not prepared for questions. I mean, I'm very
Okay,
structured. I don't need any questions.
it's a short question, and the reason I have to ask you this one because you're there in Las Vegas and have
Oh,
knowledge of what the different casinos and shops are doing. But I noticed there were shops that had regulation lines up for the Vegas games, which is something that I know is not really a thing in Las Vegas. There's not a lot of regulation lines during the regular season for anybody, and I'm wondering. Is that going to carry over? Obviously, it probably will with Vegas advancing, but will we start seeing that, or have you seen that from any of these other series now that it's getting down to conference finals and Stanley Cup finals times at any shops, or if you heard of anybody saying that there's regulation lines available in Nevada?
well, for me, Alex, I mean, personally, when I'm playing or my clients are on a game, I mean, I don't give out the regulation line because it's not as readily available. Even I don't think it's available in every offshore book. So I don't really give it out. I did one day, like I throw out a daily pick in the paper every day, and I put a regulation line out, and I got a bunch of flack for it, which is fine. So I stopped doing that. And it's great. I mean, if you guys whoever has sports interaction, which I absolutely love that site as far as options for betting, but hey, look, I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, it is to me, it's fantastic. I mean, like a game like tonight, if you like the Pens, I mean, your options are to lay a goal and a half or to lay off. I mean, if you're betting -$2, I question your bankroll management. I mean, we do see I see now at a casino here it's $1.90 and it's coming down a little bit, but the fact of the matter is that the more options that you can give players, the better it is for the player. But I
Yeah.
I have not seen that. I have two apps on my phone that I use to wager, and I haven't seen it on there. I look for it. But you know what? The evolution, you talk about the evolution of wagering in this town, and I could just point to Major League Baseball. I mean, it they started to offer things that offshore books have been offering for years, such as the reverse run line, the +2.5 line. But they're trying, but they're always a little bit skeptical because they're worried about their bottom line. And I think the reverse run line, it got taken off at a few books for a few years because guys were hammering it, even if you had to give up a huge amount of juice. I didn't think they were in love with that prop, but uh, listen, at even money or minus $1.20 on a sport that still pales in comparison as far as wagering is concerned, I don't think that you shut anything down that is going to create more interest in your weakest link as far as wagering is concerned. But to answer
Mm.
your question, Alex, it's not available. It's not readily available.
Okay.
I don't see it on my app. I looked for it this morning, but
And I
certainly
meant to ask you that
an
in the first round about
option.
that because yeah, because that's something, and I've talked to different sportsbook directors. I've emailed a couple of guys that I
Moving
know, and I said
forward.
they should they should have regulation lines. And they say hopefully, yeah, moving forward with how big things have gotten, the handles have gotten with Vegas doing well. Hopefully, we see that expansion, in the state of Nevada. But that's like just a question I meant to ask you for a while back.
Well, you're going to see it with Knights games before you see anything else. I mean, they will
Right. Okay.
do everything they can do and it's even like with player props. It's not as extensive as you can find on offshores. There's some of these books that lay prices on or that offer prices on just about every player on the ice. I know there's a few properties in town here that will give, 3 to 5 guys, and then you pick and see if they'll score or have a point, and I know those options are available. But the three-way option just it's not it's not something I look for. And B,
Mhm.
I mean, B, it really just came up on my radar because I there was games where I really wanted to take team A, but I didn't want to lay a goal and a half, so I was forced to go to something I'm less comfortable in the total. And then when you guys were starting to talk about regulation bets, I started to look at that a little bit. And of course, we can give that out on this platform because it's available to most
Right.
of the people that are watching. So that's your really long answer on that.
Right.
Andrew, I mean, Malkin and Kessel have one goal in the series. I mean, we talked about depth scoring. I think Russ needs to be more involved. He had 3 shots. He has 3 shots in the series and about 15 minutes of ice time on any average. They've averaged 29, almost 30 shots per game, which is 12th amongst the original 16 teams in the playoffs. And this is a team to me that was the most dangerous in the National Hockey League throughout the season, but I just don't see an elevation. Yeah, I don't see elevation in their game moving forward, especially in this series. Do you have any kind of confidence in Washington tonight to get a big plus money win, or we still have confidence in the Penguins to get the job done?
Well, I will say this, Dana. I don't think it's going to be a blowout from any team. I think we're going to see a very, very close game. And I think that when it comes down to it, under Mike Sullivan, the Penguins are 4-0 in elimination games. And I think that if you look at their record in the playoffs, even just the past few years, this team knows how to win close games when it comes down to game 7 opportunities or game 6 when they're facing elimination and when it's a big time game. And I think that if you look even just down the record, uh, this Penguins team has won those, 4-3, 3-2 style games. And looking down the depth list, like you mentioned, Dana, they haven't been showing up at all. But I mean, like we can keep saying, guys, there's so many weapons, there's so many guys there. But when it comes down to it, it comes down to leadership and just keeping it simple and making the right play. And I'm not going to sit here whatsoever and discredit what we've seen this Washington Capitals team do. I think the last game really showed us they do mean business and they can be a team to make that extra step. They scored that late third period goal, and boy, that was a huge one. But I think that obviously this first period is going to be huge tonight. But when I look at the rosters and I look at the lineups between these two teams, I try and think, who's going to be the difference maker. And the fact is, Alex echoed it. There's guys on this Penguins team that could almost do it themselves. But when I look at the Washington Capitals lineup, guys, I still do think that it's these couple set guys that have to do it all. They have to be those guys that are clutch, they're closers, the ones that decide if they're going to go to the next round or not, if the ones that decide if they head back to Washington or not. And I think that when it comes down to it tonight, I'm not saying we're going to see a blowout by Pittsburgh whatsoever. And I would really think that anyone wouldn't have a mind of their own if they took the minus 200 number instead of looking at a regulation number for Pittsburgh if you're looking to bet the Penguins. But when it comes down to it, we're going to see, some veteran leadership. We're going to see that Derek Brassard is on this team tonight. I think we're going to even see that Brian Russ is on this team tonight. We're going to see that Carl Hagelin is going to give it his all. We're going to see that those guys are going to make the impact on this game, in my opinion. We know what Crosby's going to show up to do. He's going to make his teammates better. He's going to fire it on net when no one's expecting him to. He's going to get traffic in front of the net. They're going to make those little plays. And I do trust Coach Sullivan quite a bit coming into this game. They will be prepared. It's just a matter of them trying to do too much versus just sticking to their game plan. We also need a couple big saves from Matt Murray to start. We need him to out goaltend Holtby tonight. And I think overall, this Penguins team will show up. The power play is going to be crucial, but we're in for a close game. But when I can get the Penguins minus 120 elimination game in Pittsburgh right now with the weapons that they have, they will not go out easy, guys. I'm on the Penguins.
Yeah, that's the side I'm going on as well. Just a question for you, Alex. Did you lean back there so the viewers can see the bar that you're representing on your T-shirt?
I didn't know.
Little
I was really trying
advertising
to.
or what?
I guess I should show off the bar shirt that we're in at Allery's, the local bar in St. Paul. But no, I'm stretching my back out more than anything. So it's kind of
Nobody
just
knows what that
convenience.
is.
I know.
Nobody knows. No,
Quick
nobody's
advertisement.
like, wow, I need to go to Allery's. Is that
Hey, it's
is
a
that
great bar. If you're ever in St. Paul, you go to a Wild game. That's a good place to stop before and after. They got shuttles and everything.
There we
they
go.
have shuttles? Yeah, I always love people to have a shuttle away from their business. Please leave. Everybody on the bus. Anyway, hey, look, Andrew, I'm right with you, buddy. Here's the difference in where the Penguins are. The last couple of years, you had Hagelin, you had Kessel, you had Bonino. I mean, those guys you could rely on. Jake Gensel came onto the scene, and nothing wrong with Jake's play for sure. But you had all these guys providing secondary scoring for the Penguins, and in order for them to force a game seven. I mean, I just think there was no other way. And I hate saying, because I did this with the Bruins game, that I don't want to say, hey, look, you've got to rely on that first line to carry you, because that's just not going to get you to a Stanley Cup final. I mean, eventually these teams, no matter how many times you've beaten the Washington Capitals, I mean, they are just not going to lay down, or you're just not going to overcome a team that has a lot more consistency and a little bit more depth scoring, believe it or not, than the Penguins at this point. But the Caps in the series are just 4-9 in their last 13 meetings in Pittsburgh. From a total perspective, 7 out of the last 3 games have gone over the total, but they just need to get more out of 5-on-5. In fact, Crosby, Gensel, and Hornquist are the only players to score a 5-on-5 goal for the Penguins in this series. So that to me is an issue, and that needs to change tonight, or the Washington Capitals are going to move on. Ian Cameron also has a opinion on this. He's in agreement with us. He's also taken the Pittsburgh Penguins minus $1.20 in regulation. Moving on to the next game, we got about 14, 15 minutes. The train wreck is almost over. Nashville at Winnipeg. The Jets are minus $1.50. Total 6 to the under, shaded of minus $1.15. Puck drop 9:30 Eastern Time, 6:30 Pacific. Winnipeg leaves the series 3-2. We see the ticket count on Winnipeg right now, so the majority of people think that the Jets are going to close out this series. And what's interesting, to note about this is, a lot of guys, when I first came to Vegas, a lot of people said, well, if you're wagering on sports, just go against the public. Well, the more I kind of became ingrained in the culture of wagering in Vegas, I realized that that's not always true. And that's specifically in the NHL and specifically in Major League Baseball. When there's a money line involved, it's more about being able to manage your bankroll than it is to go against the public. Because if it was that easy, obviously there would be no sports books. But the public, really, the higher percentage of the ticket count so far in the postseason is 39 and 24, which is good for a 62% win percentage. And any line movement and the way that the line has moved is 34 and 24, good for a 59% win percentage. So the public has done pretty well. The wise guys have done well. The sharper bettors have done well. The general public has done well. So I'm not too worried if the Winnipeg Jets are the favor of the public tonight. For me, and Alex, I know you said the same thing, and I apologize, Andrew. I didn't know exactly what your prediction was on the series, but I know that we both like Winnipeg to win this series. I think that they're going to close it out tonight. And Andrew, I mean, do you think that the Nashville Predators, I mean, the defending Western Conference champions, are going to come back and make this not only a game seven, or do you think that they're going to win the next two and move ahead to face Vegas?
Look, I'll be honest. I do have a future. I've mentioned a couple times on the show. I do have a future on Nashville to win the cup this year. I thought that this was their year, based upon what I saw in the regular season and what I saw them do last year. But to be quite honest, I think that it'll be Winnipeg in seven. I really do think that this Nashville team's got to find a way to cut down. The biggest thing, guys, and I know I always talk about pace, but to me, Dana and Alex, the biggest thing for me is being able to make adjustments on the fly. If you're a professional athlete, you're a professional sports team, you're in the playoffs, and you got there a certain way, right? You got to the playoffs by playing a certain way. That's what made you successful. But hold on, you're running into a team that can do that style a lot better than you can. They've got a hell of a lot better younger guys, and their lineup is pretty speedy. They're pretty stacked. But you got to know what your skills are and what works best for you. And PK Subban's out there right now, guaranteeing we're heading back and this and that, and he's making these guarantees. But when it comes down to it, guys, it's for me, it's more, this game's more about Subban and Ekholm and Yossi and Ellis, players like that really have to adjust their. I'm not saying they can't be offensive anymore, but they really got to adjust their play style, guys, because the definition of insanity really is doing the same thing over and over again and expect to get a different result. And I think if the Nashville Predators go out right now and they try and play this speedy game. They try and just wire slap shots from the point. They try and go end to end to end. And this game, it's going to be a hell of a bad game for them. I think Winnipeg will handle them easily. But if you watched 2 games ago when Nashville kept that score really low, that's when they looked the most promising. I mean, they didn't care about these highlight reel plays. I mean, they just wanted to play their game and they wanted to shut down Winnipeg. That's all it's about right now for this Nashville team. It's not about getting the offensive zone time and making these magnificent plays and getting Forsberg on TSN top 10 plays. I mean, it's really just about making sure when Winnipeg dumps that puck into the corner, you get that friggin' puck out as fast as you can. And I think that if they can stop holding the puck and trying to make too many plays, and Subban can stop trying to think he's a top line center instead of a defenseman, then they can be successful. And I think tonight, as much as I do want to think this is going to be a high scoring game, I think that in general, guys, this Nashville team is going to have to keep things low scoring in order to shut down this Winnipeg team. I don't think it ends tonight. I think Winnipeg will win the series, but I think Nashville goes down with a fight.
The Jets are 42-10 at the MTS Center, which is a hard record to go against. We've talked about that numerous times on the ice, guys, and the over has cashed 7 of the last 10 times between these two teams. So that's, if you're a trend better, those are trends to look at. And Alex, I mean, we're used to Nashville getting production from their blue line. I mean, it's been non-existent. You take PK Subban out of the equation, and you're not getting anything from Yossi. You're not getting anything from Ryan Ellis. Ekholm has been non-existent. I mean, but on the flip side of that, we have Subban that he's making, although lighting, showing up on the score sheet, he's certainly making bad decisions sometimes in his own defensive end, which allows areas to be open in the low slot. We've seen that a couple times from him. I mean, this to me just has not been that Nashville team, that shutdown defensive team that we're used to. But they're still good enough on talent alone to stay in these games. But I think they've been exploited, at least, obviously now twice by Winnipeg. I mean, do you think that this is over tonight, or are we moving forward to a game seven?
No, I think this series is done here, and that's a key point that you mentioned with this defensive line, this defensive core rather for Nashville. They haven't been producing well as far as on the score sheet. They've also, especially with Subban, they've been playing a lot more physical. They seem really rattled. They've gotten out of their element completely. One thing, if you're not producing as far as scoring or getting assists, or at least play your game, make good passes. Be responsible in the back end. They're just doing a lot of things. Nothing's consistent. They're just kind of all over the place, and that's why Winnipeg, with their offensive talent, they've been able to. They've everything they've done has been a lot more fluid offensively. They've gotten some great goals from the blue line. We've seen Dustin Bufflin get that hard slap shot back again and score some goals, but we've also seen them get dirty in the crease, create some traffic, and score goals that way as well. It just seems like Winnipeg's playing a much more complete game right now, and also. It seems like the fatigue factor has hit Pecorine once again. And this is a guy who I've talked about. He's only 34, 35 years old, but sometimes he plays like he's 45 or 50 because of the fact that, well, he's had to work a lot of minutes. He's had to make a lot of huge saves throughout his career. I mean, you could probably put 2 hours of film and highlight reels of some of the saves that he's made over his career. And that's because for the longest time, Nashville didn't have that great of a defense. And even now, where they do have some great guys like Roman Yossi, who seems to block about 20 shots a game. He seems like he's always right in front of somebody taking a shot, or a Subban or any other cast of characters on that blue line. Rene still has to come up with big saves, move post to post, and I think it's wearing down on him. I think Winnipeg, that crowd, it's not going to even be a matter of at this point now of what building they're in. I think Winnipeg's just a better team, and they're going to be able to wrap things up.
Okay, couple minutes, guys. Ian on this game has over 6 minus $1.05. And let's get the best bets real quick. We have a few minutes, so keep it as short as you can. First, over to you, Andrew. Your best bet on tonight's 2-game card.
I'm just going to keep things simple. I think that Penguins will force a game seven. I think that they have what it takes. I think the guys that need to show up will show up. And ultimately, I think that we're really not going to discredit Washington, but I think we're literally giving them a little bit too much credit for the guys that are producing. I think that it really doesn't show that they have much depth. And I think tonight we'll find out how the Penguins can really bounce back from that kind of pathetic performance we saw in a big game for them. So Penguins minus 120 on the regulation line.
Penguins minus 120 regulation line for Andrew. Alex, what's your best bet tonight? Yeah. Okay, so Alex, we can't hear you.
Oh, here we go. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Going on.
Well, I agree with what you were saying.
Winnipeg and Nashville. I'm going with the Jets plus $1.15 in regulation, and I think the crowd's going to be electric. Except this is the team's playing it just on a completely different level right now. I think Nashville doesn't have enough to keep pace with them. I think we're going to see. I lean a little bit with the over. I think it might fall right on 6, but my best bet for sure is the Jets win this within 60 minutes. So get that at plus 115.
Okay, Jets plus 115 for Alex, which I also agree with as well, but I don't have what it takes to take them in regulation. I will lay the fairly big price. I would go out and get this right now because, if it crawls over to 155, I too will be on the regulation if I can find it here in town. But my best bet tonight is the Winnipeg Jets to beat Nashville and to get close this series out. And Ian's best bet is Winnipeg regulation plus $1.10. I do see some even money on that. So if you can get a plus price, I would jump on that as well. So that wraps it up, man. The train wreck is over, guys. I appreciate it very much. Thanks for bearing with me, and Ian will be back on Wednesday, of course, at our 1 o'clock Pacific time show, 4 o'clock Eastern show. So for Andrew, for Alex, I'm Dana Lane. This has been the SBR Ice Guys. I appreciate your watching. We made it up to 100 viewers, 101 viewers, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks for watching.